time with them, sooner or later, they'll see the light. They'll see they need to get well. Well, let me get this straight. You're suggesting to me that when I leave this place, that I spend time with my using friends and my drinking friends and my dealing friends, but couldn't that put my recovery in jeopardy? Wouldn't that make it easier for me to go back to using? Nah. No way, Saul. Never happened. Couldn't happen. You know why, Saul? Because you're strong. You're tough. You can handle it. Plus, I'll be there with you for support. How's that sound? Just great. Well, another real common way that Slick will try to influence us is once we make a commitment to abstinence, what he will do is he'll do everything he can to get us to go back to our using friends, back to a using environment. Why? It's pretty clear why. He knows that when we're back amongst our using friends, back in those using situations, it becomes very easy for him to convince us to go back to our addiction. Well, let's say for the first time in my life, I start ignoring Slick, and instead of going back to my using friends, I get involved in a recovery process. I go to 12-step meetings, and I begin to learn these steps, and I begin to try to apply them in my life, and instead of going back to using, I stay chemically free. And let's say I'm sober about a year. What might Slick be doing? What might he be saying? Well, imagine this type of scenario. You know, I got a new job, go to work, had a rough day. Rough day at work because I had a project that was supposed to be done and things came up. I couldn't get it done in time, and I could tell after talking to my boss about it he was disappointed. So I left work and I was tired and frustrated. Then I came home and I expected just a nice relaxing evening at home. You know, I just wanted to chill out, cool out. And my wife, she invited some friends over for dinner and she didn't even tell me. And I don't even like these people. And I took her aside and I said, you know, how come? I thought we talked about this. I thought we agreed that we wouldn't do something like this unless you told me. And she said, well, I tried to call you, but, you know, I couldn't reach you at work. I guess you were with your boss or something. And then I walk into a room and I think about this, and Slick starts saying something like this. This stinks, Saul. This really stinks. Look, I mean, you're involved in your job, you're doing the best you can, and your boss does nothing but give you grief. And then you come home and you ask your wife to do something really simple, but she doesn't listen to you. You know, nobody seems to appreciate you, Saul. You try, you do your best for your family, you try to make a new life in recovery, but nobody really cares. Nobody respects what you're doing. They're only looking out for themselves. Is this really worth it? See, another thing Slick will try to do is when we're committed to recovery and he can't get us to use drugs right away, what he'll do is he'll try to discourage us. He'll give us messages designed to cause us to resent other people because they're not doing what we want. Or give us messages designed to fill us with self-pity because life is not going the way we want. Why does he do it? Because he knows if he can get us discouraged enough, if he can get us frustrated enough, sooner or later, he'll be able to get us to use. Well, let's say, instead of listening to Slick, I work my program, I work the steps, and I continue to stay sober, and I'm sober 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years sobriety. The question might be, where is Slick, and what might he say? And the answer is he's waiting patiently, and he might say something like this. Well, Saul, you've done it. You got 20 years sobriety. You got your family back, new career, you're active in the community, active in AA. Life is wonderful. It's been really amazing, the great things you've done in the last 20 years. But you know, Saul, you've got so many interests, and there's so little time. And you know, Saul, these recovery principles, these steps, prayer, meditation, going to meetings, spending time with other recovering people, helping other people in recovery, you know, these things take time. Time away from other things you might want to do, Saul. Wouldn't it make sense to start cutting back on your meetings, your spiritual disciplines? After all, Saul, you're not going to get drunk now. Not after 20 years. No way. No way at all. One of the things that Slick will do is he will patiently wait to draw us away from the resources that we use for our recovery. If he can't get us to use immediately, he will try to chip away at the spiritual principles of recovery, chip away at our recovery disciplines, chip away at our relationships in recovery, try to pull us away from them. And if he's successful in doing that, eventually he will be able to get us back to use. Now, I've got some good news and bad news about Slick. The bad news is that he's more powerful than we are. He's stronger than we are. The big book says that, remember, that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. We could also say it this way. Remember that we deal with slick, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, he is too much for us. That's the bad news. The bad news is it seems that within our own strength, within our own ability, within our own resources, we are no matched for Slick, for his deceptive, powerful ways. That's the bad news. But there is good news. The good news is this, that even though Slick is more powerful than we do not have to be subject to that power. We can find power to overcome Slick. That's what the 12-step program of AA says. It states, remember that we deal with alcohol. Let me read it directly from the book here. It states, remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, and powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. So what the big book is saying is, while it may be true that we, within our own strength, are unable to deal with Slick, a relationship with God or a higher power gives us the power that we need, gives us the power to manage these ongoing, deceptive messages designed to draw us back to our drug and alcohol use. Now, I know that's a controversial idea. I know that many people who come into a recovery process to go to AA or NA meetings or go to treatment centers may struggle with the idea of God or a higher power. That's not unusual. When I came into treatment, I was an atheist. I didn't believe there was a God. I didn't believe there was a power greater than myself. But I was desperate. Slick, my addiction, had decimated my life, had robbed all the happiness I had taken away all the hope I had. And in that state of desperation, I was willing to try anything and even explore the possibility of a higher power or God, even though I'd never experienced that before. So I did a little experiment while I was in treatment. I experimented with prayer. Not that I believed in God, but I just wanted to find out for myself if there was anything to this, because I desperately wanted to recover. And as I experimented with prayer, I began to experience some things in my life that made me aware that there really was a higher power, that there really was a God that could restore me to sanity. The big book states that that relationship is available to us if we seek it. In chapter 5, it states that probably no human power could have relieved us of our alcoholism, but that God could and would if he were sought. And I'd like to have you think about this idea of seeking. How many of us have sought things in our lives? We have sought many things, I'm sure. We've sought perhaps careers. We've sought education. We've sought relationships. We've sought drugs and alcohol. And when we think about the time and the effort and the energy we invested in those things, we can get an idea of what seeking really is. In the same way, this program is challenging us to seek a relationship with a higher power, seek a relationship with God. Why? So that we can find the strength we need to overcome our addiction, to overcome slick. The founder of AA, Bill Wilson, was sober about 30 years prior to his death. He wrote this book. And he was asked, Bill, after 30 years of helping other addicts, after 30 years of helping other alcoholics, after 30 years of seeing the effectiveness of this book, is there anything you would change? Anything? He thought about it for a moment. And he said he'd only change one word. Chapter 5 of the big book, the first sentence reads as follows. It states, "Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path." And he said, you know, the only thing I would change is I would change one word. And he changed the word rarely to never. So he goes, then if we read it that way, it states, never had he seen a person fail who had thoroughly followed the path. What does that mean? It means that over the 30-plus years that Bill was helping other addicts, it was his experience that the people who recovered regularly, continuously, and always were the people who thoroughly followed the 12-step program of AA. And what does thoroughly mean? It means thoroughly. It means completely. It means like everything. It means like working all 12 of the steps. So, a couple of questions I would ask you. One is, do you want to recover? You may not. There may be some people watching this lecture that may not be convinced they want to stop using drugs and alcohol. That's your privilege. But I would also assume that many people watching this presentation right now do want to recover. You want to stop. You don't want to be dragged through the mud by slick anymore. You want your life to change. Well, if that's your desire, if you do want to recover, the next question I might ask you, based on what Bill Wilson said, is, are you willing to thoroughly, completely follow the 12-step path of AA? Why? Because remember, we deal with alcohol. Cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Let's close with a serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So be it.